Hello, everyone, and welcome to our free December webinar, Demystifying Inventory Accounting and Empowering Bookkeepers to Navigate the Complexity of Inventory Accounting with Confidence. I am so excited that you're joining me today, and especially excited to have our guest presenter today, Shawn Coultice with Katana. Uh, Hello, Shawn. So as everyone is joining me, please let me know in the chat where you're joining from. I always love to see where you're joining me from because we have people from all over the world and it's super exciting. So as you're doing that, again, if you're just joining, this is our free December webinar where we will be talking about some of the essentials that you need to know about inventory accounting, because I know so many of you are scared of inventory. So we have Tia from Chicago, Linda from Pennsylvania, Shelly from Alberta, Canada, Heidi from Virginia, Ellen from Kansas, and Carrie from New Hampshire, Joan from Colorado, April from Washington State, Maria, now we skip. Okay, Maria from Oklahoma City. Hello, Maria. Wendy from Seattle. And Pat from Hawaii. I think it's Hawaii. Yep. Aloha, Pat. Jessica from Louisiana. Cassie from Rosenberg. I think that's Rosenberg, Texas, right down the road from me here in Texas. Natasha from Mobile, Alabama. And we have Eliza from Washington State. Muhammad from Maryland. And see Jackie from Utah. So we have people, as I said, people from all over the world. And so thank you for joining, and so many more. So Raya from the Philippines, Rachel from Colorado. Let's see, Lois from Brenham, Texas. We have ice cream in Brenham, Bluebell ice cream. If you know Bluebell ice cream, let me know in the chat because I do love my Bluebell ice cream. Shawn, do you have Bluebell ice cream in Canada?
I am not familiar with Bluebell ice cream, but that's right. I am from Canada. I'm just from north of New York there. I'm in Toronto, Ontario. So it's getting a little bit cold up here.
Yes. Yeah, the Bluebell ice cream is Texas made, and I'm not sure how far they distribute it, but it is a southern thing that we have. We have Anibal from Buenos Aires, Argentina. Bienvenido, Anibal. I speak Spanish too. Lachey from Pacific Northwest, Chantal from British Columbia, Victoria, which is very beautiful. I have been there. And Nikki, hello, Nikki. She is familiar with Blue Bunny cream ice cream, but it's not Bluebell. So that it is made in Brenham, Texas, where the cows think it's heaven. So Abiola from Montreal. Hello, Abiola. So, Rocio from Mexico, Tijuana. So welcome. We have some Spanish-speaking attendees today. So anyway, welcome once again to our free December webinar, Demystifying Inventory Accounting. So as you're joining me, I'm just going to give you some administrative announcements. And first of all, I will start with just a quick introduction about me in case you just learned about me from social media and haven't attended these webinars before. So I am the founder of Mavency, where we provide bookkeeping and consulting for Shopify sellers. And I'm the founder of the 5-Minute Bookkeeping channel, YouTube channel, and blog. Founder of the 5-Minute Bookkeeping 5-Minute Bookkeeping community. I should have changed that slide because I changed the name of the group. So this is the Facebook group with 20,000 plus members in our group, and founder of the 5MB Academy for Virtual Bookkeepers. And I do live in Sugar Land, Texas, which is right outside of Houston. And you can follow me on Instagram at 5-Minute Bookkeeping. This presentation is subject to copyright, so you may not record the presentation for purposes of sharing it on YouTube or other social media. And you may not share the handout on social media. There are handouts. We actually have two. We have this handout and then Shawn's handout. All the handouts as well as the recording will be sent to you via email today or tomorrow. And we have Jill Keel who is joining me. She is my virtual assistant who's in the background. She will be there to monitor any questions and things in the chat. She'll be sharing links that we may mention. And let's see what else. Put your questions in the Q&A. There's a Q&A tab, so put your questions there. Use the chat just to sort of chat amongst yourselves, but put the questions in the Q&A because we will answer questions from the Q&A tab at the end of the presentation. And I'm going to skip over that to some resources for you guys. Make sure that you check out my YouTube channel at 5mbvideo.com, the 5mb Academy at 5mbacademy.com, and then you can scan this code or go to the link to be notified about my latest content, webinars, and courses. And just wanted to quickly talk about the 5MB Academy, where I teach bookkeepers how to become more confident bookkeepers. And we have a lot of courses, including new courses. I'm just going to quickly go through this because I want to get to Shawn's presentation very quickly. But I just wanted you to know that these courses are available. Some are free and some are paid at 5mbacademy.com. And we will be having a year-end sale starting December the 28th, ending January 1st. So if you're not on my mailing list, make sure that you get signed up on my mailing list to be notified about the sale. All right, Shawn, I'm going to turn it over to you after I did my little my little spiel, as they call it. So, and yeah, go ahead and share your presentation, Shawn.
We'll get right into it. And Veronica, what a wonderful program you have here to help educate bookkeepers. And I can't think of a better gift than one to yourself to help improve your skill set going into the new year. So what a cool having a special at the end of the year. So I'll go ahead and share my screen, and I'm really excited for the opportunity to present to the group today and talk about something that often when I speak with accountants or bookkeeper, there tends to be some maybe fear or trepidation around working with inventory clients. And today we want to talk about some of the basics of managing inventory and hopefully walk away with an idea of when a client maybe should have a specific inventory solution and they should try and actually track their inventory, when they could potentially utilize a financial solution like QuickBooks Online to manage their inventory, and when they might need to look at an application that is specifically geared towards managing their inventory, and overall some accounting practices that you can look at managing your inventory with. So look forward to your questions as we go through here. I will go through the presentation and then we'll answer those questions towards the end here. And let's go down. Okay, and so a little bit about myself. My name's Shawn Coultice. I am the head of channel partnerships at Katana Cloud Inventory. I've been at Katana for almost 3 years now. I've been in the inventory or ERP space for about 15 years. I started out actually working at a manufacturer, helped implement their inventory solution, and worked a lot with our financial controller in ensuring that everything was rolling up correctly, and then actually ended up working for the inventory solution that I had implemented there, and have done hundreds of implementations of inventory solutions. And often I'm really connecting the back office or the shop floor with the front office finance, and sort of marrying the two up, ensuring you have accurate inventory, not only out in the warehouse, but also represented in your financial solution. So let's go through here. So what are we going to talk about today? So we're going to talk about the different types of inventory. So there's a few different types of inventory tracking, workflows that work within QuickBooks Online. So what are some applications or workflows that QuickBooks Online would be a good fit for? And then workflows that require a larger or more dedicated solution to managing your inventory, but it's important that it does integrate with that financial solution. And then we'll dig into a bit about Katana and how it actually integrates with QuickBooks Online. So I hope you guys all walk away learning something today about inventory management and some of the different solutions that are in the market to help your clients. So the biggest pain points that we hear come across from bookkeepers. And I want to start with a huge market opportunity. So if we, QuickBooks Connect was just a couple weeks ago, and there was definitely an important message coming across, and we saw the announcement last week where QuickBooks Desktop is no longer going to be sold. And so Intuit is certainly, migrating their client base from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online. And there's about 2.5 million customers on QuickBooks Desktop today, and 70% of those 2.5 million customers have a warehouse and are managing inventory. So there's a huge market of customers that are on the desktop product today that are looking for a solution to migrate over to with QuickBooks Online. And so as a bookkeeper working with those clients, there's an opportunity to help guide them to that transition where they eventually will have to land in QuickBooks Online. And so understanding how to understanding what solutions are available in the market can certainly help add value to your clients. And so often we hear accountants or bookkeepers are fearful of inventory because often what happens is the financial solution doesn't actually match what is in stock at the facility itself. And many businesses are running on a periodic inventory schedule rather than perpetual. And we'll get into what those definitions mean, but often they're doing a month end or quarter end inventory count, and then they're doing a journal entry into their solution. And sometimes they're just doing it once a year. And so what that means is the financial solution is only accurate at the time of that journal entry to update what the inventory volume is currently at. And so that can be a challenge if the business is trying to run and make business decisions based on the amount of inventory that they currently have. And a big sort of fear that we hear from the bookkeepers is they just don't maybe have the knowledge or expertise in managing inventory. So it's difficult for them to sort of make suggestions on what solutions or software products might be best to help them manage their inventory. And that's where we can help provide some guidance around options in the market today to help maybe alleviate some of the pain points that you're faced with when you have a client that is managing inventory and they're struggling with keeping their inventory numbers accurate and helping with that month-end inventory period. So what are some of the different types of tracking in inventory and what do clients need? So the first is there's no tracking at all. So there are certainly some businesses that it just doesn't make sense to actually track the inventory. So one of an example of a business that has inventory but might not want to track their inventory would be a service-based business. So you can think of an electrician or a plumber. So someone that they're buying inventory and materials and they're providing services, but that isn't the main product that they would go to market with. And so if they want to track, how many, if we're talking about a plumber, how much copper pipe they have in their truck, how many 90 fittings they have in their truck, well, that's a lot of effort involved in order to understand exactly how much inventory they have. And so in order to do that, that puts a lot of onus on the plumber, and there probably isn't a cost-benefit relationship that would make sense there. So in service-based businesses, such as a plumber or electrician, it probably makes sense for them to not track that inventory at all, and they would just automatically put that to an expense account when they were to make a purchase of say, some materials that are going towards a job. So then you have materials and supplies where they're typically things that you're buying and consuming on jobs. So that could be in that service-based business, things like duct tape or maybe consumable items. Those are things that you may not track in your inventory, but if it's something that you have a warehouse and you're putting them in a specific location and you have a receiver, then that's a situation where you might want to start tracking that inventory. And then there's your periodic inventory and perpetual inventory. So in defining those two, so periodic inventory would mean that you're doing your inventory counts periodically. It can be at the end of a month, the end of a quarter, or the end of a year. And in that case, the inventory is only accurate essentially once you've done that inventory count and updated your financial system. Whereas perpetual inventory, you have an ongoing update via transactions that are keeping your inventory value accurate within the financial solution. So as an example, if you were to do a purchase order, receive in that purchase order, that is going to do a journal entry transaction that is going to update your inventory value in your financial solution. And on the other side, if you were to sell a product, you would then be decreasing that inventory value and increasing your cost of goods sold. So that's where you have a perpetual inventory where your sales transactions and your inventory are making journal entries automatically in your financial solution. And there's a couple different workflows. So you can think of, I buy stuff and I sell stuff. So there's a lot of e-commerce businesses out there that many bookkeepers, I'm sure, are working with on this call today, where they're just buying in things and they're selling things. And so that's where it's a fairly straightforward inventory process. You know, they buy in that product, it might have a set cost associated to it, and they sell that product. So usually the cost of goods sold related to that product is directly associated to that stuff that they buy, and they can then sell that stuff. So they understand their margins, and it's a little bit more of a simpler buying and selling operation. But it can start to get complex when you have multiple channels that you're selling through. With today's technology, a small business can scale rather quickly utilizing the different sales channels that are available to them in the market. So you may have something like a Shopify store, an Etsy, a point of sale storefront. So these different channels that you're able to sell things through can create complexities in managing that inventory and ensuring that it is rolling up to your financial solution accurately. So as you start to create more complexity within a business that manages inventory, you may start to look at inventory solutions that can help manage and simplify that complexity. The next we have, I buy stuff, I build stuff, and then I sell stuff. So that would mean that you're buying in maybe materials or raw materials. You have then you're generating a finished product by combining those materials together or having some sort of operation that is done to those materials to then create a finished product. And so from that perspective, you have some added complexity. So you have some materials, you have some operational costs, and then you have your finished product. And so that starts to get even more complex because your cost of goods sold no longer is just the cost at which you bought your material for. That cost of goods sold now includes multiple products potentially, as well as operational cost. So that's where that COGS entry starts to get more complicated, and you would likely need to start looking at an additional solution. And then it gets even potentially more complicated. So I buy stuff and I need to know everything about my stuff. So if you think of a food and beverage company or an electronics company, you start to get into these areas where the businesses need specific traceability to be compliant within their industry. So that's where you have like batch tracking or serialization, and businesses need to be able to understand what batch something was sold in or consumed in within their facility. And again, we're not getting to that more complex area within the business that a solution would be required to manage that beyond what maybe QuickBooks Online would be able to offer. So types of tracking inventory. So we talked about this, not tracking at all. So what are some of the benefits to not tracking at all? So just overall accounting for purchases when purchased. So accounting for sales of items without cost of goods sold. So they just go directly into your expense account. So what are some of the pros of this? It's easy to track. and it's good for a service-based business, as we had talked about previously. So if you're not going to track inventory at all, that's not necessarily a bad thing in the right context. So if you're working with plumbers or electricians, having them starting to track their inventory probably isn't the best idea until they maybe get to a certain size where they then have a warehouse and a whole receiving process in place. And this is because some of the requirements in order to track that inventory are heavy on a service-based business. Whereas the downfall of not tracking inventory at all, it doesn't allow you to do perpetual. So you don't really understand the value of inventory that you're currently carrying. You're kind of running off a gut feel as far as what you might need to purchase, and it's difficult to plan for. And so usually what we see is when a business owner starts to go beyond their brain capacity or brain power. So usually in a small business, you have a few key individuals that really know everything that's going on within that business. They know exactly how much inventory they have in stock. They know every sales order that's come in through. They have all their open jobs right sort of in their mind. But as they start to grow and get bigger, they start to lose control, and that gut feel of what's going on within the business becomes less and less accurate. And that's where a solution or a system to help manage that and take that gut feel and sort of knowledge of what the business owner might have in their mind and put that into a system so that overall the business can continue to scale and grow. So if you're not tracking inventory at all and the business is starting to grow, that's where suggesting maybe a method for tracking that inventory so they understand what's in stock, they can plan out their purchase orders and have a better understanding of their cash flow can really be beneficial. So types of tracking. So we talked about periodic versus perpetual inventory. So periodic inventory, so you're accounting for purchases to inventory asset and then making regular counts and value adjustments to account for costs of goods sold. So essentially, periodic is when you're making physical inventory counts. And so if you're working with a client that manages inventory or they're a manufacturer, and you're having to go out to their warehouse and do inventory counts at the end of every month, or often you'll see in this type of environment where at the end of the year, they'll actually stop selling for a day. They'll shut the business down and say, all right, everyone go out to the warehouse and we're going to go count. And you have to go and count your inventory. And I actually worked in an environment like this. It was a molding and millwork company. And so molding and millwork, you can think of the trim that's around your doors and the crown molding that is on the ceiling of your house. And that stuff is pretty difficult to count. So you think of quarter round, which is, the small thing around your baseboard. You might have 16-foot lengths of that, and you've got thousands of them. So to go through and you track that by the lineal foot, that can be very time-consuming to track periodically. And we really never knew exactly how much we had in stock. And so how we ordered was when the bin got to a certain point, we would go and order a bunch more. And so that caused challenges in inventory. We would end up carrying way too much of some things, not enough of others. And we just had no visibility in order to forecast or plan out what we should be buying or what we shouldn't be buying. It was all based on gut feel. So periodic inventory has some benefits in the sense that you don't need to track things as often. Like, for example, when you receive in things, you aren't necessarily updating your inventory levels. They just kind of go into the bin. You create your PO and it goes into the bin. But if you have a receiver and a process for that, it makes sense to move to a perpetual inventory environment. So as you're receiving in goods, that can then automatically update the inventory value in your financial solution. And that's where you then can start to have an accurate cost of goods sold when things are sold from your inventory as well. So as things are coming into your inventory, you're receiving them in, that's going to increase your inventory value. When you're selling things, that's going to decrease your inventory value and it's going to increase your cost of goods sold. And if you're doing that perpetually and you have accurate costs of goods sold, your financial solution will be accurate and it'll reduce the number of journal entries that you'll have to do on a regular basis. That's going to make your month end much cleaner and allow the business owner to make better business decisions because they're going to have a better idea of their cash flow, their current inventory standing, and even forecasting of how much inventory they should be buying based on, previous month's sales and forecasted sales. So you really start to move into this advisory perspective with your client if you can provide them with the right tools to manage their inventory and move into that perpetual environment. So inventory workflow requirements. I buy stuff and I sell stuff. So we talked about this a little bit. What are some of those businesses that just buy and sell stuff? So often apparel companies, they might strike up a brand and they outsource the manufacturing though. So they come up with cool ideas of t-shirts and they buy in those t-shirts and they sell them online. Or we'll see, I've got 2 young kids at home, so it seems like, every few days we've got some toys or games coming in from Amazon. And so companies are often reselling those products, and they're buying in those products and then reselling them. And they often have an individual SKU. So it's pretty straightforward where the cost of that product is what you purchased it for. And then the cost of goods sold when you sell it is going to be that purchase component, or that purchased dollar value that you bought it for. And you're going to reduce your inventory value based on that cost of goods sold. Now, where things start to get a little bit more complicated and a solution might be required to help manage this is when you're taking multiple components and you're combining them together. And so this is in some sense called a manufacturer, but often, so Katana has about 1,700 customers that utilize our software. A lot of them sell through e-commerce channels. They don't refer to themselves as a manufacturer. The majority of them refer to themselves as like an e-commerce brand, but they take different components and materials, they combine them together to make that finished product, and then they sell it through different sales channels. And so you can imagine the challenges that come along with that. So you've got different materials. You've got then some labor components. You can see this gentleman here. He's, combining some things together on this bike, which potentially they're going to sell. And so they've got a different finished component. They had the wheels, they got the frame, they've got the seat. They combine those things all together, and now they have a different finished product, plus the labor it took for that individual to put that bike together. So that's where you have a bill of material, you have a routing process through production, and all that rolls up into a cost of goods sold. So if they're going to buy stuff, they're going to build things, and then they're going to sell, a different finished component that's been produced, that's when it starts to become important to look at a inventory solution that can help them manage that process. So inventory workflow requirements. So this is where we start to get to that next level. When you're working with a business that maybe they're in the food industry, or potentially one of the industries that we've seen quite a big pickup in is sort of the CBD oil type companies, or weed shops. They seem to have sort of some strict requirements. Alcoholic companies, so businesses that are producing alcohol, also have some stringent requirements from tracking the lot or batch that things were produced in, where the materials or raw materials came from, and that's to help if there was ever a recall put into place. And so these are requirements that they need in order to meet compliance of their industry, and that's where a solution usually is required. Smaller businesses can sometimes get by managing this in Excel. But again, as they start to scale, it becomes a challenge. And then if you think of the risk to that business, so even if the Excel document is working pretty well for that business, it's fairly easy for that Excel document that has maybe all of their products that they've sold that are batch tracked, listed out and what batch number it is. Well, that, Excel document is accessible by a few people within the company, and it could maybe get, a cell get deleted, and then they've now lost sort of track of what that component was, that serial number was. And so that's where looking into a solution that can help manage that beyond Excel starts to really help out. And then you get into things like landed costs and shipping fees and outsourced manufacturing, and tracking the inventory and components across all those different locations can become challenging. And this is where, again, starting to look at an additional solution to help manage that does make sense. So operational workflow, inventory purchases. So what does that operational workflow look like? And so we've talked about this a little bit, and this can kind of help give you that visualization. So you have an inventory item that has costs associated to it, and you then create a purchase order. And so that purchase order is sent off to your vendor, and now your vendor has maybe even received a payment for that purchase component. Then that component would be received in, often by some sort of receiving process within your inventory solution, and then you receive a bill. And so once the bill is generated, that then would increase the inventory value within your financial solution. So within Katana, for example, when that inventory item is received in, we can then generate the bill over in QuickBooks Online automatically, and that would update your inventory value within QuickBooks Online. And then when we look at the operational workflow from an inventory perspective on the sales side, when you go and sell a product and you ship it out and generate your invoice, that's going to decrease or bring down your inventory value, and it's then going to increase your cost of goods sold. And so that cost of goods sold, if it's a purchase component that you're just buying and selling, usually is equal to what you bought the product for. If it's a manufactured component, that cost of goods sold will include the materials that went into that finished product, and often the operational costs or labor that went in to produce that finished product. And so that's where you would generate that cost of goods sold from, and both will reduce your inventory value. So some of the complexities that go along with manufacturing is that as you produce a finished product, you're not only taking the materials that go into that finished product, you're also adding this operational cost. And that operational cost needs to increase your inventory value overall, because you're going to decrease it when you sell the product relative to that cost of goods sold. So that's where that added complexity can become a bit challenging in ensuring that your inventory value and your costs of goods sold are maintained and are accurate, and where a system that has bills of material and operational costs with a nice integration into QuickBooks Online can help manage that. So tracking inventory within QuickBooks Online. So QuickBooks Online Plus and Advanced do have inventory available within those solutions. It's FIFO cost based. It is fairly basic inventory tracking. So there's going to be no assemblies. You can't do multiple units of measure. It's SKU based, and it doesn't have reorder points. So this is a good solution for businesses that are reselling. So they're buying things and they're selling things. There isn't unit of measure conversions, like they buy in one unit of measure and convert it to another unit of measure. So fairly simplistic inventory transactions, QuickBooks Online is a good solution for. The desktop product did have more functionality that hasn't been rolled into QuickBooks Online, and it doesn't look like that's something that they're going to be investing in. But who knows what the future will hold exactly for QuickBooks Online and the functionality that they're looking to evolve with, though they are strategically partnering with Katana as a go-to-market solution to help their clients transition from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online, with QBO plus Katana helping with those inventory clients. So some of the gaps of QuickBooks Online currently today is it doesn't have that advanced inventory management, thinking of, bills of material or operational cost. I believe it just came out with some limited sales order functionality, but prior to a couple weeks ago, they didn't have the ability to enter in a sales order. So you had to create a quote and then convert that directly into an invoice. And that created some challenges because then you couldn't do partial invoicing if you were only partially shipping out a sales order within the system. It's difficult also if you're selling across multiple sales channels to have success with QuickBooks Online and managing that. So if you're selling through Etsy, Shopify, Amazon, and you have a point of sale, that's going to be a bit challenging for a business to manage all within QuickBooks Online. They don't have production planning or shop floor data collection. So the cost of goods sold can be a challenge to roll that up, as well as planning out your inventory for what's going to be produced in production. And it's difficult to do that overall job costing. And so it's sort of in general, one of the challenges with QuickBooks Online for businesses that manage inventory or are manufacturers, they will start to hit a ceiling as far as how far they can continue to scale and stay on QuickBooks Online. And then they're left with, okay, do we move to a more complete ERP system like maybe NetSuite, or do they look at adding on something to QuickBooks Online, which would allow them to keep their financial system where it is, but extend QuickBooks Online out with something like Katana that's going to specialize in that inventory management and have that nice integration directly into QuickBooks Online, so we don't have to change the financial solution within that business. So what about QuickBooks Desktop? So QuickBooks Desktop is a solid inventory product, and certainly hear a lot of great things about what it can do for businesses. So the enterprise version has a lot of advanced functionality. It has a available quantity, so how much you're able to sell based on demand. That's not something that's available in QuickBooks Online. It has negative quantity warnings as well. So if you're going to go into a negative quantity, it will give you a heads up about that. It has enhanced inventory receiving, and it has auto cost and pricing, so it can change price when costs change. So there's some nice advanced features in that enterprise product. But with the announcement that QuickBooks made the other day, it likely isn't going to be a supported platform by Intuit forever. They're no longer selling the lower versions of that product. And that's sort of, I think, the first step in the direction that they're going to be moving away from supporting the overall on-premise solutions. So some of the drawbacks of desktop today: the installation and setup, user licenses and access, integrations aren't quite as robust. And it's maybe not the most cost effective, especially if you're looking at having someone host the solution for you. But one of the biggest things that sort of I hear as the drawbacks of desktop is some of the larger accounting firms that we work with at Katana, one of their main objectives is to increase the service offering that they're providing their clients. And so bookkeepers, it's often the same thing. You want to, maybe you're offering a bookkeeping service, but how do you increase that billable rate? And it makes it much easier to increase that billable rate if you can provide additional value to your client. And if your client is in a desktop environment and accessibility isn't excellent, that's where that can become a challenge. So by moving into a cloud-based solution with QuickBooks Online and having a solution like Katana to help manage their inventory more effectively, this can help you not only improve the bookkeeping services that you can provide with accurate books at the end of the month and keep the financial solution in check on a regular basis and run that perpetual inventory, but it also allows you to move into this advisory service for that business by taking their business from desktop to online, moving to a perpetual inventory environment, and allowing you to offer more robust services or advisory around that business. So what is Katana? So we've been talking a little bit about inventory solutions and manufacturing solutions that integrate with QuickBooks Online. And Katana is just that. It's a cloud-based inventory platform. We've got about 1,700 customers on the solution today. Most of them are located in North America, but we are a global solution. And we really focus on a solution that's really easy to use and get up and running, that has excellent support. So we have a team of partner managers that work directly with our accountants and bookkeepers, as well as an onboarding and support staff that are available 24/7 to help your clients get up and running successfully. So some of the challenges that we solve in the market today are the lack of transparency and real-time insights that businesses have within their inventory, accurate costs of goods sold. So one of the biggest challenges we hear today is businesses that are selling online or manufacture their products have a really hard time understanding what their costs of goods sold are and understanding how much money they're making on an individual transaction basis, or maybe looking at that by product or by product line or by customer. It's difficult for them to understand their profitability on different levels. And often they're left, only understanding their profitability by looking at that month end. And that's really challenging for a business owner to understand what aspects of their business are actually profitable. And it brings me back to my implementation days. And often after we would go through and do an implementation, we would come back in maybe 3 months after they had been up and running and utilizing the system. And it was always interesting to hear the owner provide some feedback on surprises that they uncovered. They would realize that a customer that was their largest customer, they were actually losing money on overall. Though they drove in the most revenue, the cost of actually servicing that customer based on the price point they were at, they weren't making any money. And they would have these sort of surprises with regards to products. They would have sort of a smaller category product that they would make 40 or 50% margin on, but they never really focused on it from a marketing perspective. And businesses would change their overall approach to and their go-to-market strategy by having these insights and understanding where their business was profitable and where they should be focusing their resources. So some of those challenges today that I often hear are understanding where you're profitable as a business and the real-time understanding of what you currently have in stock, what's your demand, what you need to make, and what you need to buy. It's really difficult to determine that if you don't have a fully integrated solution that can provide you insights as far as answering those questions. So Katana helps solve those challenges by providing that real-time inventory insight. We have built-in purchase order management. We integrate across multiple sales channels so that we can pull in that demand, consolidate it, and help identify what they need to make or buy. And then we can go and prioritize that through drag and drop functionality, ensuring that the employees on the shop floor are working on the right jobs at the right time. So we're managing and scheduling that manufacturing, and then we're gathering that information up from the shop floor through our shop floor control application. So we really have that accurate cost of goods sold because we're tracking that shop floor time on jobs by them logging on and off of those jobs, just using their cell phone or a mobile device. It's a very easy to use solution, and we have great integrations into QuickBooks Online as well as Xero. So how we integrate with Katana and QuickBooks is we send sales orders over as invoices, purchase orders go over as bills, and we integrate at the customer and contact level within the solution. And so when we think of the thing we were talking about earlier on, where you buy something, it increases your inventory, and you sell something and it decreases your inventory, it increases your cost of goods sold. As those transactions are happening within Katana and you're pushing your invoice or your bill over to QuickBooks Online, it's going to automatically create those journal entries to ensure that your financial solution is running in that perpetual inventory environment. So Veronica, I'm not exactly sure how much time we have, but I can jump into a short demonstration of how to set up that integration between Katana and QuickBooks Online and what that journal entry looks like on a per transaction basis over in QuickBooks Online, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we have about 30 minutes, including time for Q&A. So if you want to take about 5 minutes or so to show that, that would be great.
Okay, wonderful. So let's take a look here at Katana. So you can see I'm currently operating in a browser. We can see there's different buttons across the top here: sell, make, buy, managing your stock, reporting tool, managing your items. And when you log into Katana, I can see all of my demand listed out here. So we can see what sales orders I currently have in place. And we have this sort of stoplight logic where green means go, yellow means proceed with caution, and red means, okay, there's something I might need to do here. So let's stop, take a look and understand maybe what inventory I need to purchase or what I might need to make. And we're looking at this across 3 different categories. You can customize this. So if you want to only look at sales items, if you're in just a buy and sell environment, you certainly can. But for example, if we look at sales order 1 here, I've got the finished good in stock. The ingredients are already processed and the production job has been completed. So we're green across the board. I can actually go and ship this product out to our customer and create the invoice. As we scroll down here, we can look at sales order number 5 is red. So that means that the finished product isn't currently available and I don't have an open purchase order or manufacturing order in place that would fulfill that order. So that means I need to either go and create a manufacturing order or purchase order in order to fulfill and fulfill the demand that sales order has created. The other thing that you can do here, so you've got great visibility about what's going on the shop. I can drag and drop these orders. So I can see, if there's a more important job, I can go and drag them around, and that's going to reprioritize the inventory as well as what our employees see on the shop floor. If we were going to look at how to set up the integration with QuickBooks Online, so this would be a one-time setup. Over on the settings page, you can go over to your integrations. And you can see I'm already connected to QuickBooks, but I'm going to go ahead and disconnect. And I'll go ahead and reconnect. So when I go and connect up to online, so it's just going to pop open here, I'm sure, in a second. And I'll say, yes, I want to connect Katana to QuickBooks. And now it's going to take me through sort of the setup wizard. So you can run it in a simple accounting method. So your sales orders are automatically going to go to revenue. Your purchase orders are automatically going to go to expenses. So some businesses do run in that model. Most, though, utilize the accounting with costs of goods sold. So this is operating in more of that perpetual inventory environment. And so here you can see you have your purchase order is then going to increase your inventory value via the bill, which we're sending over to QuickBooks Online. Your sales order is going to generate that invoice, and that's going to decrease your inventory and increase your cost of goods sold. And then your manufacturing order is actually going to go over as a journal entry for your inventory and liabilities, and that's related to that operational cost that you're generating if you're having labor associated to your cost of goods sold. So this way, your financial solution is always accurate and matching the inventory value that is within QuickBooks Online and that is within Katana. And you can select which ledger accounts you're pointing to. So your product income, your inventory balance, your cost of goods sold, and your liability accounts. You can associate your revenue accounts to different categories or product categories. So I've got components, tables, chairs, and living room furniture, and I've associated these to different revenue accounts within QuickBooks Online. So once you've got that set up, I will click Done. And as quick as that, I've now integrated Katana with QuickBooks Online. So with that integration, for example, on the sales side, if I wanted to go and generate an invoice over within QuickBooks Online, I can go and let's say I'm going to go and let's go and ship this product out. So I'm going to go and say deliver all. So I'm going to deliver sales order 1 to our customer. So as that order is delivered, it's going to move from my open order status to my done status. So I can see all of my done sales orders listed out here. And so now I can go and say, well, it's completed, and you can select multiple ones at the same time if you wanted to. Maybe you're doing it at the end of the day. And I can go and say, I want to invoice everything that's on this order. And you'll notice here, I've got the total dollar value, I've got my tax, I've also got my cost of goods sold and my profit. So we're going to be pulling over that cost of goods sold here. So really easily, I can now go and click to see what that invoice looks like over in QuickBooks Online. Just with one click, that's going to take me into QuickBooks Online and allow me to look at that invoice. So we can see here the items that are on that invoice in QuickBooks Online. So I can see the customer, the product, the description, the rate, and the amount. And if I wanted to go and look at the transactional journal related to it, I could. So this is going to allow me to see the accounts receivable transaction related to that sale and what was debited and credited within QuickBooks Online. So here we can see sales order 1 and the dining room table, and we have our AR and sales that was debited and credited. And if we wanted to see the cost of goods sold journal entry as well, I think the easiest way is to just go over here and look at maybe sales order 1, and that's going to pop up here with the journal entry related to sales order 1. And now we're going to see the cost of goods sold and the inventory asset that was debited and credited, relatively speaking. So this is automatically making those journal entries to ensure that at the end of the month, our financial solution is matching what's actually happening within that business, and we're running our inventory in a perpetual environment. So if you have any questions about Katana, certainly feel free to reach out to myself. You can book a call with me or someone from my team. But yeah, thank you very much for your time, and maybe we can now dive into some questions.
Thank you, Shawn. And I'm not sure if we can get that link where we can share it in the chat. That would be great.
Yeah, let me do that.
Yeah, if you can put that there, that would be awesome. And while you're doing that, also.
Yes, hold on one sec.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm trying to.
I can't do it.
Let me grab the link here.
Yeah.
I'm going to go edit link and then copy address. Doing some wizardry. I'm a software guy. I should have this, right? All right, I'll put that in the chat here.
So I have a question for you, and then we're going to go to the questions.
Sounds great.
Another thing that really is very intimidating for us as accountants and bookkeepers is, when clients come to us and they think that we need to do the full inventory implementation for us. We are not inventory accountants. And believe me, even after working with inventory as much as I have, I don't want to be an inventory accountant or do the implementation. So what kind of assistance can Katana provide to accountants and bookkeepers who are bringing clients to Katana?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point, Veronica. So there are 3 different levels to an onboarding that we can offer your client. So one is a guided onboarding, and that's where we have a dedicated onboarding rep, and they're working with you and your client to get Katana up and running and integrated with QuickBooks Online. And so usually that is a situation where you're willing as the bookkeeper to maybe take on some of that implementation work, maybe some of the data setup. But most bookkeepers are going to go with our full onboarding experience. And so that's where we have a dedicated rep that's going to help with that data conversion and walk them through getting the system up and running and live. And then if you're looking for someone to even come out to the facility and on site, we have a great group of, we've got 4 sort of fully trained partners. The 2 in North America that we most commonly work with are Ledger Gurus and Mendelsohn. And so they would actually come on site often to scope out the full implementation. And usually that's a full tech stack implementation where maybe they're helping optimize the full process. And so I guess my point as far as what services we would provide the bookkeeper and the accountant, it depends on what is best for them. And then we do also have a full training program to get educated about Katana for anyone that wants to partner with us and even maybe get into that implementation service offering if that's something that they're interested in. So we can help your client and you directly implement Katana, as well as we can train you up on how Katana works and how it helps businesses manage their inventory so you can improve the service offering you're providing your clients.
That's fantastic to even have that many options. And one thing we need to keep in mind is that, yes, we do not have to be the inventory experts for our clients. We need to really guide them to work with the resources that Katana or other inventory management systems provide, because they do provide those resources. And then to really know your wheelhouse. Like, for example, when clients want us to do or approach us about inventory consulting, we usually say that where we add value is in the integration and making sure that the integration is set up properly or that makes sense for their specific business type. So I'm going to go into questions. We have a question from Michelle. How does this work with something like the A2X integration for Shopify and Amazon? None of the actual invoices live in QuickBooks. We're just getting summary transactions.
That's a great question. And so when you have usually A2X or there's like Cinder or Bookkeep, whatever those types of solutions, there's a few of them that take the transactions across all their different e-commerce channels, and they make those summary entries, and they help reconcile the payments. Those solutions are going to care for that AR side. And so what Katana, what they don't have is the cost of goods sold.
Yeah.
And so we're working on either coming up right now, what you would do is a month end, usually cost of goods sold journal entry, because that's where your accurate information is going to reside within Katana. So we'll pull in those sales orders, but we won't actually integrate at that invoice level into QuickBooks Online. We're only going to integrate on the purchase order level, and then you're going to make that journal entry for the cost of goods sold if an A2X or a Cinder is involved. And that's when they're the high volume e-commerce utilizing multiple e-commerce channels.
And that's exactly what I was saying of how do we add value then in that relationship, is that we then go in and determine what type of integration you need and how transactions need to come over. And especially if you're using an integrator app for e-commerce sales channels. Question from Weston. Would this work with a warehouse storage business? The warehouse stores and ships and receives individual companies' inventory for them.
Probably not a warehouse store. I mean, the use case is potentially, but I would say that doesn't sound like an ideal Katana customer. Usually our customers are the brand themselves. So they would be the one producing or at least buying and selling the product to the customer. If they're potentially, I would say I'd want to scope it out a little bit more though.
Okay. Question from Kim. If they have not been tracking inventory before, how do you start with, let's say that cutoff at the beginning of the year? We weren't tracking inventory before, but now we are. What do you do with that? How do you start out with that beginning inventory?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so usually you would have like your month end entry that's made into or year end, depending on where you're at. And then you're going to start to utilize that solution where you're going to enter in your current inventory that you have. You're going to do an inventory count to actually update that inventory solution. So in Katana, we have a stock take feature. You can go around with your tablet or your computer, you go around, do your inventory counts, or you can just do it in Excel, and then you can import that into the system so that your inventory is now all accurate within the solution. And now moving forward, you're going to be creating your purchase orders and you're going to be doing your sales orders all within Katana so that you have this accurate inventory value. And that's going to be then pushing your bills and your invoices over to QuickBooks Online. So you have to do that inventory count to get your inventory entered into your inventory management solution. And then you have a starting point that you can start to do your transactions in.
Yeah, and then from an accounting perspective, typically you have to adjust cost of goods sold because it's the only thing you can adjust in the current year. So if that's a large amount, then you need to have a conversation with a tax preparer to see if a prior tax return needs to be amended. Question from Amrit. we are focused on small and medium construction companies. Is there a recommended threshold when companies should consider implementing an inventory system?
That's a great question. So in my experience, it comes down to customer satisfaction. So when you think of, are there lead times starting to get extended, and are they able to continue to fulfill their promised delivery dates? And if they are having a trend where they're struggling to meet promise dates, and their length of time it takes to get the order in and fulfill that order is increasing, that's when an inventory solution is likely going to help alleviate some of those challenges. And so I start to look at the customer satisfaction rate of that individual, or how quickly is the owner losing their hair? Because usually the owner is the one that this falls on their shoulders. And we have an interesting client story where the owner was working 18-hour days consistently because they didn't have an inventory management solution. And it was just to keep all their orders that were coming in every day and make sure they had enough inventory. And it was just constantly working at the facility. And when they implemented Katana, the owner was thrilled because he's like, I have my life back. Like, you know, I always knew kind of what was going on because we were managing that inventory within a solution. And if he ever did want to see what was happening, he could do it right from his device. So it's really accessible for him.
Great. Question from Mary Kate, just comparing, how does QBO plus Katana compare to QuickBooks Enterprise Manufacturing? And I know you talked a little bit about it. I don't know if you have anything else to say about it, or we can do another question.
There are some advanced things within QuickBooks Enterprise that we do here. Katana plus QBO can't
Shawn,
achieve
she
yet.
said, I'm sorry, she also said that it's an e-commerce and wholesale business that uses the buy, build, sell model.
So, I mean, we'd have to look at that specific use case, but in that scenario, Katana is likely a good fit for that business. I would just need to understand a bit more about the requirements. One of the things where Katana does fall short today, which we will have a solution for at the beginning of next year, is a customer price lists. So we don't have price lists because a lot of our customers are selling through e-commerce. Price lists are less important. But what we've noticed probably over the last 6 months is a lot of customers are coming in from accountants that are on desktop products like Enterprise, and they need price lists. And so that's something that we're building out, and we will have launched in the beginning of Q1. So that's one area where Enterprise does have price lists and Katana doesn't currently, but we will shortly.
Question from Maria, do you work with restaurants?
We have a few restaurant customers, but they're usually kind of funny use cases where they're a restaurant, but they also sell their products as frozen items directly to customers or through like online sales channels. So I would say restaurants are typically not a good fit for Katana just in general.
Okay. And same, another question from Maria, maybe it's the same answer about clients in the food industry that are using Margin Edge, which I'm not familiar with.
I'm not familiar with Margin Edge either. We do have a lot of clients in the food and beverage industry. Typically, though, they're packaged goods. They're not fresh food.
Yeah, that is a challenge for, especially when it's like flour or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beyond my pay grade. Let's see. How does Katana incorporate labor and freight into cost of goods sold?
Yeah, so your freight, I guess if it's landed cost, I don't know what end we're talking on with regard to freight, but if it's landed cost, we can add that in on the purchase order level, and that will get divided up across the items that are on that PO, so that your landed cost is then incorporated into your item cost. And then as far as your labor, that does get incorporated into your bill of material, and so as you produce the finished good, that gets rolled up into the cost of goods sold of that finished product.
A question from Christina. How do you account for other inventory adjustments such as damages, incoming returns, etc.?
Yeah, so you can do stock adjustments within Katana. And then that would, you can then push those as a summary entry over into QuickBooks Online.
Question from Lisa, does Katana offer assemblies?
Yes.
And question from Lisa, does Katana use a bill of materials for manufacturing products, which I guess is kind of the same thing, same question.
Yeah, and it is we didn't get into it. I just, for the demo, I didn't want to get into too much detail, but we have a really nice bill of materials screen and operations screen right on the items list. So feel free to get in contact with us and we can walk you through the software. And if you take some of our sales training, you can actually get a free sandbox of the solution that you can play around with.
A question from Yui, I think it's going back to the Amazon, Shopify, e-commerce question. Does that mean that you would need something like Cinder and Katana, which going back to, again, how do you deal with that, where we're using an integrator app for the sales side and then letting Katana give us the reporting or do the integration between Katana and QuickBooks on the purchase order side. And I feel like I'm answering the question.
No, that's, I mean,
yes,
yeah, exactly.
You would need something like an A2X Cinder or another integrator app. And if you would like to add more, Shawn.
And it just comes down to volume. So we work with quite a few bookkeepers that if they're a lower volume company, then the integration with Katana works great. If they are a higher volume company where their orders are probably over, at least probably 30 or 50 per day, at that point, then you're likely utilizing something like A2X. And that's going to handle the summary entry over into the financial solution, and then Katana will have that cost of goods sold information that you can put over to QuickBooks Online. We are actually investigating doing our own summary entry, but likely we'll probably partner with one of those solutions as it's what they specialize in.
Yeah, and even Shopify doesn't necessarily give you all the information that you need in terms of returns.
Right.
And so it's one of those things, again, when you know what information is being pulled from the sales channel and what isn't, then that helps you to determine the type of integration that you need and the tool that you need.
Yeah, exactly. So it's one of those situations where it isn't like a one size fits all answer. Yeah. And that's where it is best to speak with, someone from our team will help direct you in, okay, what's the best use case for this? And we can even give you some examples of partners that we work with that are bookkeepers that have sort of good use cases that can help you out there.
A question from Arash. My question is, do I need to do any adjustment transaction in case the cost of goods sold and inventory in QBO and Katana at the end of the year? So I think it's like, do they need to make a journal entry to adjust inventory and cost of goods sold if they're using Katana?
No, it should be a perpetual inventory, and it should be updating your inventory and your cost of goods sold per transaction. In the case of like an A2X is included, you should be doing that cost of goods sold. Some people do it on a weekly, some people do it on a monthly basis. It just depends on how often you're updating that information. But at the end of the day, either way, at the end of the year, you shouldn't be doing sort of one summary entry for what's happened across that year.
Yeah. And Mary Kate is saying, so is there no perpetual inventory option for high volume e-com sellers?
Well, there is. The value of inventory is still managed perpetually in an ongoing basis. So your inventory in Katana will be maintained at the detail level of the actual product. And then as far as your value of inventory within QuickBooks Online, that is going to be updated from those transactions that are going in a summary level. The one thing that doesn't get updated from that would be the cost of goods sold entry. And that's where you would maybe be doing a weekly or monthly entry, just depending on the use case.
Yes, and we do that all the time with our e-commerce clients because they're high volume, so we can't have all of the invoices going into QuickBooks because it's too much data that
It's
you
too
don't
much.
need. It can live. I mean, a lot of people want to track inventory in QuickBooks because then they think they can get all the reporting in QuickBooks, but actually, Katana has some very good reporting and analytics that is better if it lives in Katana because that's what it's designed to do. And then, as Shawn said, that you can just record it in a journal entry to adjust your inventory and cost of goods sold in an e-commerce high volume situation. So,
Yeah, exactly.
all right, I think that is it. I'm just gonna check the chat. Yep, we are good to go. So thank you everyone for attending today. Thank you to Shawn for being with us today and making more sense of inventory because can be complex, it can be scary, but just know that you have friends at Katana who can help you to as you bring clients over to them, they can hold your hand through the process and do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the implementation and assisting your clients. So with that said, I will wish you a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everyone. Thank you, Shawn, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.